social media is a blessing and a curse, and I'm gonna strictly probably focus on Reddit, simply because like if you're on Instagram, you don't necessarily have like those communities. Like sure, you could follow pages, but it's attached to your face. Same with like Facebook, Twitter. Reddit is going to be an anonymous forum, and when you're able to be anonymous online, you can say whatever the heck you want, without like really fear of real life repercussions for the most part. So the one of the ones that I like had recent or found when I was first like really getting into getting out of my anger, actually, and that just like I've been able to look at with a cleaner perspective by doing this, and like having my opinion heard and validated, instead of having someone be so like angry, or be that angry person myself.
If this is your first time joining us, I just want you to know we don't go into our stories. We did that in September. And so if you want to hear the backstory of the four of us, that's where you can do it. Cheryl is not joining us today. She is having Thanksgiving with her family in California. So she's with us in spirit, sending her love. And we are launching our intergenerational private Facebook group to all of you today. So you're going to have that invitation by the end of the call. We're very excited about that. We already have a lot of different generations coming into it. So today's the official launch. So we're really excited to welcome all of you in that. So let's start with Dr. Ruth giving you the list of everything that we've been watching. And then if you want me to give a summary of that, I can do that.
We've been watching Social Dilemma. There's a Facebook Dilemma, Great Hack on Netflix, Eat the Rich, the GameStop Saga. So we've been watching a lot of videos, series about how social media has impacted estrangement and other things, but we're thinking estrangement, they play a big role in that. And Lisa, I just do want to tag on to what you said about how you had to do some work after you watched all those. I did the very same thing. I watched all of these pretty much back to back, and I think that now explains why my mood was what it was this week, because it was heavy and definitely had an impact on me. But yeah, we're definitely seeing, it was eye-opening for me, how just a few people on a social media page can get together and blow up something into a huge thing and have all these followers, and they all are piggybacking off of each other with their behaviors and making changes in their lives, and that's what's happened in Estrangement too. They've all there's such a theme and a thread, which many of you have heard, I'm sure, that the ones that they're alienating from, they're calling them abusive and saying they've been through so much trauma and all that in their lives, and it's unbelievable, but it's a common theme, and it's just an example of how a few people started together and just gathered a lot of followers, and they're all saying the same thing, and encouraging each other to estrange from their families.
Peer pressure on a global scale. Mm-hmm. I mean, we all remember peer pressure as kids, and how difficult it was not to go along with the crowd. It's very difficult. But now you add the power of the internet, that's a whole different thing. Uh-huh. So let me just give us the summary. To me, when I read this summary, even though I think it's important because not everybody has watched all of these films, it almost sounds to downplay it a little bit. So just know this stuff is very, very real, very hard to watch, very hard to get involved with, because it's just going to make you angry. But all the films we watched explore the impact of social media on society, focusing on the addictive nature of these platforms and their influence on user behavior. We're called users. And the only other industry that refers to us as users, by the way, is the cocaine industry. So that's how addictive social media platforms are. The films feature interviews with former employees of major tech companies who discuss the design strategies employed to capture and hold the user's attention. All the documentaries raise concerns about the negative effects of social media on mental health, democracy, and privacy. Each highlights issues such as the spread of misinformation, polarization, it's talked about a lot, and the manipulation of users for financial gain by social media companies. Overall, the films serve as a thought-provoking examination of the social consequences of the digital age and the role of social media in shaping and influencing our lives. And I had a conversation with Jillian and a friend of hers last week, and Josh, hi Josh, he's going to be joining us sometime because he was also estranged from his parents, and we definitely want to get voices from the man cave in here as well. After that call, Jillian, you talked about being in the Reddit communities, and that's when something clicked for me that a while ago, my husband and I watched Eat the Rich, which was the GameStop saga. And you got to put that on your list too, everyone, just to really understand the businesses that are uprising and how they're doing it, and what's happening, again, behind the scenes that we're not even aware of, and how it took down a hedge fund. I mean, a bunch of online misfits took down a hedge fund and made a bankrupt stock. They revived it, and they became very wealthy as a result of it. So that's the power of this Reddit community. But Jillian, do you mind it kind of maybe starting and explaining what it is, what you think about it, and just your experience with it?
So I mean, as we've talked about, kind of in our discussions that we've had just in our own little group on email, I think that there's a lot of confirmation bias, and we get to see the side that affirms us and keeps us angry, because then that keeps us on the app and we're just heck yeah, or whatever we're doing, doom scrolling through this just information overload. Whereas growing up, we still for a couple years had to make sure nobody was going to call us if we wanted to use the internet, or they knew phone line's going to be busy. But I've never really not had information able to be thrown at me. And I think that that's an important factor to not only address that we've never had this much information and knowledge and other people to talk to, or other people to be manipulated by or manipulate. So much like you said, the addiction community also uses the term users, and I wouldn't call myself a tea user, I'm a tea drinker. So I wanted to just bring up a couple of the Reddit forums that I have been on. And social media is a blessing and a curse, and I'm gonna strictly probably focus on Reddit simply because if you're on Instagram, you don't necessarily have those communities. Sure, you could follow pages, but it's attached to your face. Same with Facebook, Twitter. Reddit is gonna be an anonymous forum, and when you're able to be anonymous online, you can say whatever the heck you want without really fear of real life repercussions for the most part. So one of the ones that I had found when I was first really getting into getting out of my anger, actually, and that just I've been able to look at with a cleaner perspective by doing this, and having my opinion heard and validated instead of having someone be so angry or be that angry person myself. One is Just No Family. This one it gets out there because it shows the best and the worst. So it shows people who are being the insane family member, or having the insane family member talking to them, and it's got a lot going on. Another one, this one, it has, how many users are in this, and it's just there's 179,000 people on this one forum. Next is going to be r/insane parents. This one has 1.4 million people.
Wow.
So that one gets toxic really, really fast, because like I'm gonna probably use and abuse this word throughout my entire little monologue I'm doing right now, but it really is an echo chamber, and everybody just confirming like, yeah, F them, or like being able to see it differently and like with compassion instead of just like, wow, these people are monsters, has just had me sit back and be like, wow, is that how I used to sound because of all the pain and the anger that I had? So this one, like I said, 1.4 million on r/insane parents. It's like, even in the description, it just says it's a weird place where you could post these crazy parents who post on like things on Facebook and do harmful directly or indirectly things to their children. Things posted here do not have to be physically abusive. Abuse and insane are not mutually exclusive. Like, that's already setting the tone for what you want it to be, what to expect from this. And instead of like looking at it with compassion, like it's kind of like when you're a psychologist, the C word, crazy, like you don't like to use that because it creates this negative connotation and really not only makes that person feel bad, but kind of changes your opinion of them if you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, that person's crazy. So like I would put that in the same category of like, yeah, sometimes like people can say it lovingly, like, oh, she's crazy, or like, my mom's insane, because she'll like make a funny joke or like say something a little out of pocket and you're like, where did that come from? But the bias that we have, that we're looking at on these little like just toxic just cesspools are gonna be like, just it already denotes something so intrinsically wrong with like what you're gonna post, instead of like, maybe this person is having a mental health crisis, or like maybe we're not getting the full story, we're just getting that one moment in time and everybody is sitting there just consuming it. Another one I found, this one has 29,000 members, r/estranged adult kids. And we did touch on like Lisa, you brought up the fact that like, a lot of times like it's considered like it's what people considered abusive, or like they were abusive, and these like topics come up. And even in this one, the first description is, estrangement is a healthy response to an unhealthy situation. Okay, granted. This sub is a safe space and closely monitored. Parents of estranged adult children are not welcome to participate in this sub. So it's not even inclusive, or like participate in what capacity? Like, are we able to, like, say I'm the estranged parent, am I able to look and get these perspectives? And if not, then like, are we really working towards like understanding, or are we working towards continued alienation and anger? Last one that I wanted to bring up was, it's kind of in the same vein, has a little bit more members. It's Estranged Adult Children, a community for adult children that are thinking about or were estranged from one or both of their parents. Common reasons for estrangement are abuse, differing expectations about family roles, neglect, clashes beyond personalities, and a value system like religion. This one, I feel like, even though it's still gonna have some like toxic dialogue in it sometimes, this one I feel is like taking the most healthy approach to it, because it's just it's welcome to all things, and it's not just about like, you can't be here, we're just angry all the time. Like, it's actually opening up a dialogue. Like,
but are parents allowed to say something without getting attacked, or are you still seeing a lot of anger and attack happening even in that one?
This one, I mean, it's gonna be hit or miss. Just like, you post an opinion on Facebook, and then like a very distant relative will say something a little out of pocket, and you're like, what? Like, that wasn't even inflammatory. But so you're always gonna have that, but it's a lot healthier, I'd say, especially because it's a smaller group than like the insane parents one with 1.4 million. You're getting hundreds and hundreds of comments all at the same time too. Like, even looking right now, there's 660 people online on this forum right now.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's, wow. Yeah, and some of it, like, a lot of it, you could see that it's just people who are hurting. And when I estranged from my mom, I only had like Facebook at the time, and I would like block her on it because she would reach out and say some pretty mean things to me. And at the time, I really didn't understand why, because I was just like, what did I do to deserve this? Like, all I want is like some space to heal. And what I didn't really see was that was her expressing her anger. she would create multiple different ones and send me like messages about how I abandoned her and how like, you know, she's gonna miss all these milestones in my life. And I was like, Mom, you kind of chose this by choosing your husband. But what, like I've previously stated in previous sessions, it wasn't about choosing me or choosing her husband. It was her lack of choosing herself, which led her to look for that in everyone else and take her anger out and like shifting our locus of like thought on it from that anger of being like, well, why the F would you say that to me? Or like, why the F are you doing this? And into a one of compassion and just like, I see your pain and I see your hurt. And you know, what can we do to fix that? I wish I had learned that earlier.
But it's still hard to do in the moment. I mean, when somebody's dishing it out to you on Facebook and they're tagging you or putting your name, or even if they're not, if they're implying their parents are the insane ones and you're the parent, then you're guilty by association there. So it's just, as conscious as we are, it's just very difficult to get outside of this mind hive that's designed to take control over our minds. And Kimberly brought up a very interesting point in the chat, is she said it's very telling that the leaders of, you know, the early people who develop these platforms will not let their kids go anywhere near social media or phones or anything else. Now, I remember this was, okay, so like 25 years ago, I read an article, and I remember it was a magazine article. I remember it was in print. It wasn't on the internet yet because the internet was still very new. I read an article that talked about a study that was being done of the impact of video games on children's minds. And it warned parents, it cautioned them, saying this is changing your child's mind by letting them play video games. They were talking about Nintendo. We have a whole billion-dollar gaming industry right now that little kids are a part of. And I know it's hard to be a parent sometimes. I was too, when you're looking for a babysitter, and that phone is a great babysitter in the moment to hand your kid or that movie or that game. But you have to be aware of what it's doing. And I think the sad part about this is, I mean, it talked about the impact of preteen girls, and they're just going straight to suicide, and how the suicide rates have just jumped. And the unfortunate part is that, as I think every single person on this call will probably tell you, they did not see their estrangement coming because they were so close to their kids. And those parents of those younger kids or the preteens, there's no way they understand the impact of this, and they may or may not be able to act soon enough. I just wanted to mention that, but let's switch over to Aaliyah. So as a millennial growing up with it as well, and we are seeing a big difference between the Gen Zs and the millennials. There's a big difference between how you're coping and viewing things and how you do or don't have control over the internet. But now tell us your point of view.
Yeah, so I was not looking forward to this chat today just because of experiences I've had on social media. I've been harassed by men a lot, so they just come on there and it's just really uncomfortable for me. So I just never felt like I enjoyed it at all. When it first came out, I was super grateful for it because I was like, oh, I haven't seen this person in years and this person in years, and it was really good to start. And then it just from there went downhill for me just because of the harassment and unwanted attention. And so like I'm very grateful for it. It served a lot of purposes. It helped me rekindle with my twin sisters that I didn't know that got adopted to a different family. So it has brought a lot of joy in my life, and I'm so grateful for having that. But I rarely post on social media anymore. I rarely, just because I just like, I don't know, I like to keep my life private. My real name's not even out there on the internet, so you can't search for me. I did a lot of things so people can't find me, especially after like when I was a recruiter. So I did a lot of recruiting, and how you had to find people. I had to like search for them and stuff like that. And there was a lot of people we didn't hire because of what they were posting on social media. So it says a lot about who you are as a person. And so I just didn't want somebody to judge me by what was on my social media. So I learned a lot from that. And I'm just like, oh, there are some things that are not even worth posting. So.
Wow. Yeah.
I have a question. Did you experience, because I know like, well, we may be like the younger side of this, but we're like, we've got a gap in age. Did you experience like significant bullying as well? Like, because you know Lisa had brought up the like the heightened teen girl suicide and like that. I personally experienced a lot of bullying. Oh my God, in the MySpace days, like people would just make accounts at my high school and like bully the crap out of people. And then it also gave me like this sense of body dysmorphia. And now that we have the use of like AI and Photoshop and stuff, and like it's a distorted reality. I can't imagine the impact it's gonna have on like, because we get this instant gratification of like, oh yes, I like that, I need to look like that. Or like even with the video games, like now our attention span is like, sure, we've been playing this video game, like I was literally playing my Switch last night. Like sure, we can pay attention to it for like 12 hours, but there's constantly something going on, there's constantly a quest you have to do or whatever. But I digress. Did you get like bullied?
I feel like the harassment was bullying, right? It was a lot of men that would bully me and come on there and just like, because of what I was posting, I was a little party animal. And so it was like in my dresses and going out and just thinking that was like the thing to do, is post every moment that you were living life. And so, and I feel like, I don't want to say I regret any of the posts I made or anything like that, but I just felt like I got unwanted attention from people thinking I was a certain way when they didn't even really know me. And so from those experiences, it has really put a negative thing. And I just like, I went through a social media detox for a couple of months because I just wanted to just disconnect. And those were like the happiest couple months of my life. I think it was about a year I didn't even post on social media. I made one post and they were like, "You're alive, you're still alive." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm alive." They're like, "You haven't posted in over a year." And so people really think you're like weird if you don't post pretty much every week or something. And I just I had to detox from it. And it's a real thing. I believe in social media, phone, electronic detox. And so that is definitely going to be something I do in my life at least once a year.
I like that. Well, I mean, so Leah and I, for everybody, we follow each other on Instagram. But you remember when I was like doing modeling, I would post those photos and like say the unwanted attention. I totally understand that too, because then it would also be like my dad's friends. And I was like, oh, I don't like this anymore. So I stopped posting things like that.
Yeah.
I want to remind everybody too, if you missed last time, we're coming off the heels of our conversation about cognitive distortions. So be sure to go back and listen to October's conversation on YouTube, because we're still kind of riding on the wave of that. And that's exactly what everything that we're talking about is those cognitive distortions that's being put in front of us with or without our awareness. That's another big message too.
Yeah, that's something that's going through my mind right now. I'm picking out a lot of the cognitive distortions, and I pulled up a list real quick, if you don't mind me saying a few of these. There's a lot of blaming and denying, blaming others for your problems or mistakes, knowing it's not their fault wholly, at least. Negativity bias, you notice only the negative, not the positive, perpetuating on social media. Over personalizing, thinking that what other people are saying, their opinions, are actually facts when indeed they're not. Double standards, fallacy of fairness, wanting things to work out the way you want them to work out, double standards. There's so many of these cognitive distortions that fit here with social media, what we've been talking about today. Yep.
we have to realize, the addictive loop that this keeps us in, the doom scrolling, you call it, is that when you just can't stop, it's not good for you, but you just can't stop. But there's other things that we can relate it to, maybe as older generations, like slot machines. How many times have you gone to Vegas and you walk by those slot machines and you put $1 in, and now you're $300 in? I mean, we have things throughout our society that have kept us in this addictive behavior, but now it's just amplified to a whole nother level. The dating apps, when I was doing my dating community for everybody, singles beginning again over 40, there was this belief of the grass is always greener. Maybe you don't want to commit because now there's something better, someone else. And this was before swipe to the left and swipe to the right. I mean, now it's just much faster, so many more options that keep you in that. And one thing I thought was very interesting is when they talked about one of the solutions, if there is a solution, because there are, like you said, Jillian, and Aaliyah, there's positive and negative to this whole thing. And unfortunately, this is the world we live in. And now we are dependent upon the internet. It's just how it is. But they said, turn off your phone's notifications. And I get bombarded with this all because I've never had notifications on my phone ever. I don't turn on my phone sometimes until 9 or 10 o'clock because I stay in a creative mode. I don't look at my emails. Some days I do if it's a business day. But if it's a creative day for me, I won't even go there. I won't turn it on. I have people saying, where have you been? I've been trying to, haven't you get my message and everything? I'm like, well, it's 10 o'clock and I just turned my phone on. So if that's something that you do, if you have those notifications on, okay, that's your hit as a user, that's your crack cocaine right there. You're getting that dopamine hit with that little notification. Every like that we get, every comment that we get, that's the hit. That's what keeps us coming back for more and more and more. But now take it to a negative hit or a dislike, or the preteen girls who, I forgot your term, Jillian, about the self, how you see yourself. What was your term?
Body dysmorphia.
What is it?
Or are you talking about like the when I was talking about body dysmorphia?
Body dysmorphia. What a term. Yeah. And we saw that was also portrayed in these preteen girls where they just didn't like how they looked without a filter. I mean, again, it's just really a lot to get your head around and get outside of it.
Yeah. I think like like I said, I'm going to use this term a lot, but bringing it back to like the echo chamber too, is like, we've fallen into such a state of just acceptance with like, oh, this is just how it's going to be. So people, especially younger kids, can't recognize like the effects. And like, I'm going to take it on to like Instagram or like photo sharing sites, can't recognize reality from simulation or like what's simulated in front of you. I have seen so many just egregiously photoshopped photos with like young women or men underneath it just being like, wow, I wish I looked like you. They don't even look like them. Like, no, this is all a fantasy world. And we only like so on our pages or whatever, we only really want to post the best. I'm not posting about eating ice cream sad at 2 a.m, watching movies and missing my mom, like I'm not going to post that, but I will post like me and my friends having fun sometimes. And that's kind of opposite, because like then people see your life. Bringing it back to the Reddit one, like people don't see who you actually are. So it's more of like you're able to spew this just toxic rhetoric instead of having like a conversation. And then it's also toxic on the other side. So we have the two extremes where like, where is that middle to meet in with the understanding of like, this is reality, this isn't real. And like, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Is there any in those Reddit communities? So you're completely anonymous. So there's no way that any of those comments get tracked to you.
I mean, unless, of course, like some people can do what's called like doxing and get your IP address and like track you back down. Nobody uses it as like a face photo sharing site for the most part. So it's not going to be like your Facebook or your Instagram, but it will do like screenshots or like a long form posts asking questions, or like, you know, some people go on there and they just like, try to flex their creative writing muscles, and you can immediately tell when that's happening. But yeah, for the most part, not a lot of people are going to be able to like track back who you are, unless like, because you get a little like icon next to your username. Like your username could be like ice cream and chocolate 123. It doesn't have to be anything, and then you can make like a little robot thing, unless you post like your actual face or like your actual names, because like some news stations will use that, and some of their anchors will have their actual name as it. So that's like one thing, but that's for like sharing news. When you're on these sites sharing, or like on the other forums sharing like your anger and your hate, like you could just say some really out of pocket things that like isn't going to be traced back to you because it's all anonymous.
Okay, however, so your peers, you're anonymous in your peers. So now all of a sudden your level of bravery is off the charts, because you think you're anonymous, but you're not anonymous to the platform.
Nope.
Your IP address, everything that you're doing on that is not anonymous, and it's linked to you. And now let's bring it down to back to estrangement. So now you're one of the millions of people in Reddit thinking you're anonymous, posting this, your belief system about how you feel about your family, your parents, whatever. And now that platform has developed your personality. Now that platform, everything that it does, it's advertising to you as its user, and it knows your buttons to push. So now you are being shown what is going to push your buttons. And you believe that everyone that you're connected to is also seeing the exact same thing, but they're not. They're being shown what pushes their buttons. That's why there's so much political division. That's why there's so much division between vaccination and non-vaccination. Because if you mentioned your fear of being vaccinated or not, you're now going to be fed a lot more things to be fearful of. And it's going to cause you to turn against anyone who you believe thinks differently than you. This is what's being cultivated. So let's bring it back to estrangement right now. So what is this doing to families? The polarity. 70 million people in the United States alone are estranged from a family member. Is this the biggest contributing factor?
I think it has something to do with it for sure, because kind of like we were talking about earlier, it just like, if you want to find the answer to your question, you'll find exactly what answer you're looking for, not the right answer or like, hey, here's the polar answer, like why you might be feeling. You'll find exactly what you want to find that's right for you. So because you can look up, is the vaccine good for me? And then you might find a bunch of stuff that says it. And then if it's bad for me, literally one of my classes was like, you'll find exactly what you want to find, depending on how you frame that question in Google or on social media. When you make a post like, am I dating a narcissist? And then you'll find all of the things that, yes, you are.
Yeah. And early on in my estrangement, I literally thought it was only happening to me. And that's, I think, what I could say, at least most people feel that way. Maybe all people feel that way, that when it first happens, you feel like it's only happening to you. And there's something really wrong with me. Then it's embarrassing. You feel a lot of shame. So that's what I did. I searched for, I don't even remember now because it's been 4 years what I searched exactly, but I did find groups and on Facebook that were support groups. And they were good in the way that they validated my experience, and I didn't feel alone. But then, like Jillian said, there's an echo chamber, and the negativity it just perpetuates itself, and it's I had to leave those groups because that I didn't feel good, and I wanted to move on, and then found Lisa. Been blessed with her, so going through the course has helped me. So there is a good thing about social media in the beginning, but then it's not the end all answer.
And if you, as a trained psychologist, felt that way, then I think that speaks to how us mere mortals have felt through estrangement.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a heavy load to carry, and the shame that's associated with being a discarded parent. And now if it's being posted online and your kids saying, this is how toxic and horrible my narcissistic mother is, it just takes it to an entirely new level.
And apparently that was happening. My daughter was posting things about me, and people were trying to reach out to me, and I wasn't responding to them. I knew I had learned from one of my sisters what was happening, and I didn't want to know. I didn't want to read it. I didn't want to hear about it. I was just really depressed about it. Yeah. And you're right. I know I've been trained and have certain skills but at that point, I'm not a psychologist. I'm a mom that's been estranged. So I go through it like everybody else does.
Right. Absolutely.
If I had not had my faith, I don't know where I'd be. That's been a big factor too, that I lean on my faith a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a very big factor.
Mm-hmm.
We had a call one time with our online Zoom community of estranged parents that we talked about. We had everybody share like a story from their childhood. And just so that we could kind of walk through a process of seeing it differently. And I'll share that with you guys at the end, just so that we don't have to end in this doom loop of negativity, because this is a hard conversation to have. So we'll come out of this towards the end. But something that was interesting about that call is that everyone shared this unbelievable story about childhood. I mean, a lot of people shared some very big vulnerabilities and some things that they had gone through. We had a lot of things in common. We all had an abusive alcoholic parent or two. And again, why did our generation endure an alcoholic abusive parent? Well, because of their childhood. And that was their addiction. And the only way that they learned to ease their pain was through substances. So now we're the generation that was raised by, a lot of people that had some very difficult mental issues. So everyone's going through sharing their horrendous childhood stories. But then we realized that we all had something else in common. We did two things. We had a bike, most of us, and we would run away on that bike and get away from our crazy families. But we were also barefoot from the time school got out to the time school started. Okay, so what's the significance there? It's a way that we grounded ourselves. So by walking barefoot in nature, it's one of the techniques that we can use to ground ourselves. And we as children were barefoot for the entire summer. And we were in nature and we were riding our bikes and we were alone or we were with friends, but we were not sitting in this place that was erasing our mind and reprogramming us. We were not. So we have this ability to step back from it. And I think that's, if I were to give one commercial today for any segment of our population, it would be the young moms who are pushing away their grandparents. Because you as a parent, hardest job on the planet is to raise kids, and you're understanding that. But if there's one person on this planet who is going to be able to support you in raising your kids, it's the grandparent. You might not like them. You might think they're crazy. They might be very difficult to deal with. And Aaliyah and I talk about this a lot. We still think our moms are crazy. Even though we've come a long way and we've done a lot of work, we still see the crazy side of our parents, even though we've learned to love them and navigate. So this is just hindsight speaking. You will eventually become that crazy parent. Every soul drops into this world through the context of their parent. Every soul drops into this world through the context of their parent. So instead of pushing our parents away, what we should be doing is bringing them closer, observing them, asking them questions, and then figuring out how to break that cycle versus pushing it away saying, oh no, not me, because that's just denial. But now when you bring that in and you enlist your parents' help as a grandparent for your child, that is your best resource, because the grandparent will never put that child in front of a phone or a computer. They want the time, and they have the time to give to that child. So if there's just one message I could get across today, I think that would be it, is moms, dads of little kids or teenagers or preteen, you got to think about re-enlisting help from your parents to raise your kids in this society. And if you don't know how to do that, you reach out to me and our community, and we will help you bridge that. Okay, that's where we are going with this. That's the direction we're going. So if you think, well, I talk too much smack online and my mom's never coming back, or I don't know how to come back, or if you just try to tiptoe back in and act like you didn't do anything wrong, there's no right or way to come back. But if you want to come back and build that bridge, we are here to help you do that. So I just want everybody to understand that you have a spokesperson in your corner, regardless of your age or your generation of your coming on this call. And we will help you navigate that.
I just real quick, if I can kind of point out something. You were talking about the addictions that like your parents went through, and like how alcohol was like their escape. I want to it's obviously just like a hypothetical here, but with the trauma that like our generation, or like my generation right now, I'm seeing my friends become moms and like, dads and everything. And like, we haven't exactly like grown up. I'm sure every generation says this, but we haven't grown up in like the easiest time. We've gone through we've been in a war for basically our entire life. There was a pandemic. Nobody saw that coming. Now some of us are like so worried about rent. We're like working so many jobs that and now there's like kids involved. The addiction that I see in my generation of young parents, I'm not, but like whatever, is getting lost in your phone. So not only just handing like a tablet to your kid, but like in a way, maybe it's not like an alcoholic in the same way as like the abuse that you would suffer at their anger or rage, but there is a form of a neglect that's happening where you're like, our addiction is just checking out and numbing the pain by like not even turning our brain on and having other people think for us. And then we read things like that make us angry, and we're like, yeah, I want to know more about this. And what is that doing to like Gen Alpha now?
Yeah. I've seen that, Jillian. Yeah.
So I have concerns about that, because what we all have in common is that we had parents who had addictions to get away from their pain. And now we're seeing that this generation become a parent that has an addiction to get away from their pain. Like, I'm terrified for what's next.
Yeah.
Like
that addiction loop, it's scarcity. It's scarcity. It's the mindset of lack and scarcity. And when a parent who's having a meltdown with your kids, and one of the things that we hear a lot is the angry parent, or that's one thing that my daughter said, is like, you yelled all the time, you were angry all the time. Part of me really owning and coming clean in my part about this is absolutely owning that, and I did. Because here's what mom mode looks like. Come on, let's go. Get your shoes, put your coat on. Where's your homework? Again, we're having this conversation again? No, you can't do that. You didn't do this. Okay, that's mom mode. It's 10 octaves higher than It's all right. I just came out of my meditation chair. It's all right, children. Everything's going to be wonderful. Okay. And this was just like a few seconds that would pass. So it's that phone that now the parent also disconnects from. They have this crazy life. And you said it, Jillian, they're not going to post the crazy, I'm a bad mom life. Look at how beautiful my little children are. Aren't I a wonderful mom and everything? And now they got 10 likes or 1,000 likes. And now that just validated that they're okay when they know they're failing. Because as a parent, you cannot do this job 100% right. You just cannot. So it's just built into parenting is the fact that you're not going to be 100% successful, no matter how good you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because other parents are not posting the negativity, they're posting the grass is greener on the other side look, our adult children are thinking they're the only ones that lived in whatever, and the other side looks so great. The grass looks greener on the other side. It is not. And I think they're out there thinking that's the case, maybe trying to find that out. And I know I've heard other people say that they've reached out to other women and they're just like what I needed when I was growing up. But then they find out they're not. They spend enough time with them and they find out they're just like mom was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're never going to put the truth online. Aaliyah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I mentioned that on the last talk. I was like, especially studying child development and like being so angry at my mom for the way she raised me, thinking like if I was only raised different and stuff like that. It's so easy to like think if I had a different mom or something, but now I'm like so grateful for everything she taught me. Now I can just reflect on how, even though she was hard on me, how much I've gotten from that, how much I've learned and how tough I am now for the world out there. I needed that. So it is really easy to think like the grass is greener on the other side, but in reality, you were given exactly what you needed. And so to just take the time, I think, to reflect. And I know that's why we're doing this, because we want to create that bridge. And just by being with you, Cheryl and Ruth, we are starting that bridge of connection. Just when you were talking about how we reminded you of your kids and we're able to bring that joy in, knowing that that's possible, right? Even it may not be building the bridge between the exact families yet, but we are building the bridge in between the generations. And I think that's where we start, because now we're able to hear that generation and what they're dealing with and what they're seeing and how they're being influenced versus just wondering why we couldn't be given a different path.
Yes. Yeah. Aaliyah. Yes. And Aaliyah and Jillian, I want to tell you, and I want the whole world to hear, I have been blessed by you two being in this group and just being a part of this and being willing to, because it's just been giving me a lot of hope. Not necessarily for reconciliation with my daughter, but just, hope that there are people that are willing to, bridge this gap. And you two have just been a blessing.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for saying that, if you're going to blame your parent for all the bad stuff, you better blame them for the good stuff too.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And keeping in mind they were raised by humans and what did they have to deal with. And, Jillian and I had our conversation last week with Josh, and it was, we should be approaching everyone we meet with, not how are you, but what happened to you? Mm-hmm. And just really understanding that nobody's got it easy right now. Everyone's been through a lot. Everyone was raised by human parents. Again, the DNA, again, that every soul drops into this world through the context of their parents. I mean, just keeping that in the back of our mind. And Kimberly mentioned that, partly why her kids swear that they're never going to have children of their own. I think it was back when Dr. Ruth was talking, was because just how difficult it is, and Kimberly, if you meant something else, let me know. But yeah, we're seeing that too, maybe now we don't have, our kids are just so afraid to have kids because they are seeing how difficult it is. And I think that's a very real thing too. My daughter said that, one of my friends said on Facebook, she said something like, "Oh, do you have a grandbaby in your life?" And I was like, "Well, I haven't talked to my daughter in 2 years." So I'm texting her sister saying, one of my friends saw that somebody has a grandbaby. There's something I need to know. And she said, "No, we're not having kids. Don't worry about that." And I said, "Oh, because you're just so screwed up with your bad parenting. Is that why?" And she laughed and just said, "No, Mom, it's because the world's such a crazy place right now." So I was like, okay, well, thank you for that. But let's try to bring ourselves out right now. We got about 10 minutes before the hour left, and then more questions and everything. We will share the YouTube channel with you. We'll share the Facebook group for you to join the intergenerational Facebook group, and let's just start positive communications there. Next year, we're going to be launching, Leah and I are working on it right now. We're going to be launching our community, in which it's the Building the Bridge. So it will provide you the opportunity to reconnect if that's what you want to do. But if you just want to be a surrogate, or you're missing your mom, or you're missing your daughter or your son, you can come in and start to develop that relationship there, because there might be some reconciliations that just don't happen. And we're also going to be creating an avenue for grandchildren who are old enough to find their way back in and maybe reconnect with a grandparent. Because we know, these kids are on their phones from very young ages. So that's coming. Let's leave on this. This is our course and the community that Dr. Ruth was talking about. And I want to end us just on this, on a positive place, to see that we have control over what we're going through right now. So let's take a look at this now from consciousness. So this is our 6-month program. And the first month in level 1, this is what it looks like. And this is all about healing our subconscious wounds. In this place, this is our cognitive distortions. This is what all of it is in this place. And this is everything that we're talking about. We tend to spend the majority of our consciousness in one of 5 places, and we do bounce around. We bounce around throughout our day, throughout our life. When we're in level 1, these are some of the emotions that we're dealing with, working from our subconscious wounding in level 1. So we go into each of these areas. Now, each of these 5 areas are a different level of consciousness. Okay? The lowest level of consciousness is right here, is when we feel ashamed for something. And Kimberly said she was suicidal at the beginning of her estrangement. Yeah, I was too. Okay, I have developed numerous courses for different audiences for the past 35 years on this very subject of all these different planes of consciousness. So I knew better. I knew I was at the lowest level of consciousness when I was suicidal, but yet I was still there. Because like Dr. Ruth said in the beginning, even as a licensed psychologist, how it took her down. It doesn't matter who you are. It's there, unfortunately, and impacting all of us. The only way for us to get out of this area of shame, right? Okay, suicidal being the lowest point of this. It's when we're feeling unworthy, unwanted, we feel invisible. Okay, so again, this could be our preteen kids feeling invisible among their friend group, or invisible in the sea of their online community, feeling discarded. And again, we've got to realize the back of somebody's mind when they're in shame is they're suicidal. We've really got to keep that in mind. The only way out of this is to blame someone else. So we've got to keep this in mind too. If you're getting a heavy dose of blame coming from your estranged kids or an ex-spouse or a boyfriend, they are feeling shame, like they're feeling not good enough. The hallmark of shame is I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not important enough. That's the dialogue that keeps going. And the way we get out of it is by blaming another. But what this ultimately means is that we feel guilty for something. We know we're so out of alignment with our authentic self. We know this on a subconscious level. And so think about now estranged parents. When we're getting blamed for everything that didn't go right, we are carrying guilt because we know we didn't do this job 100% right all of the time because it's impossible. So naturally, that's just going to be built in. If we keep moving up to the next level of consciousness, and most of the time, by the way, the majority of people will just stay right there of feeling shameful and then blaming and coming back. And what's getting cultivated again and again and again is just that self-hatred. It just doesn't stop. But now to get out of those levels, okay, and to keep moving to the next plane of consciousness, we get detached right here. But here we feel discouraged. Symptoms are procrastination. We feel empty, bored perhaps. Life feels really hopeless. And we move from here in a state of sadness. If we move up the scale, okay, this is from like suicidal being on a vibrational frequency scale of 0. Now we're moving up. And all of these are just a few degrees apart. Okay, that's why they run into each other, why we move from one to the next. But now if we're in sadness, we're experiencing grief, the failure of life, all the coulda, shoulda, wouldas. Okay, this could come as an absolute shock. Like, how did this happen? How did I get there? How did this happen to me? Last week, I was talking to my daughter for 2 hours. We were laughing. It was great. How did this just happen? And now we're feeling remorseful for everything that we have done since the beginning of time, which what does that do? Takes us all the way back to our shame. The ceiling of level 1 and keeps us hostage is fear. And you'll know you're in this place when you're worried. This is where our addictions begin. This is where we're just afraid. And we feel anxiety and we're going to withdraw. So sometimes an estranged parent doesn't understand like why the estranged child doesn't want to come back into this wonderful, loving, big family. And it's because of if they're in level 1, they're going to be naturally withdrawn. It's very difficult for someone in this level to come back, to come out of it and say, hey, I'm back. Everything's fine. You know, they really have to work through all of these different levels. We talk a lot about fear and anger. And I know Jillian said sometimes it just feels better to be angry. It feels better to hate someone. And that's because right here, we're moving into the second level, which now deals with our anger and our bitterness. And that's right here. What we have to realize is hate is fear's father. Hate is fear's father. So if somebody's really spewing out the hate and the anger, and you're seeing all of these characteristics, it means they're afraid of something. So as we start to move into level 3 and level 4, you know, you'll see where now you can see the bigger picture of, oh, this person's hate, this person's vengeful, antagonistic rage means that they're afraid of something. Okay, hate is fear's father. But let's go back to right here. In order to get out of level 1, we land right here, and this is our desire because we desire for life to be different. However, the unfortunate part is that we end up landing in a place of disappointment. Because what we really want feels like it's being denied, keeps us in that perpetual place of wanting something, imprisoned. Okay, this is the doom loop. This is the scarcity loop. This is where it will keep you right here. You're frustrated and you believe that you're lacking something. And you're always looking for it outside yourself. Okay, that's what the whole purpose of the internet is. Let me go to the internet. Let me post something and show my beautiful life and my beautiful family. So something can get validated within me, but then it always ultimately comes back. And you know, you get that dopamine hit for just a few seconds, but then it's not enough. Then it goes away. Then you have to come back with your next post that's going to help you get that hit again. That's why it's so addictive. But this disappointment is where addiction falls. So now we keep moving. And a lot of people just fall into bitterness right here. The resentment, they're judgmental, prejudice starts to really fuel here. Might ridicule others. You see this a lot on the Facebook groups of like somebody might share something and they'll say, please be nice, because they know they're about to get ridiculed for thinking or being a certain way. You didn't do it right. There's that shame again. And a lot of people this is where they fall for that. I want to point out something at this level, because this is important to know. Now, today I seem to be an advocate for grandparents. Now, here's something grandparents really have to know. This is where grandparenting can fall if we're not consciously aware of it, because we categorize these relationships as being special, and we think that they should be different. But on the lower levels of consciousness, it looks that way. But in the higher levels that I'm going to show you in just a minute, you're going to realize that that's very limited thinking. It's very compartmentalized thinking. It's fear-based thinking. And it's what cultivates all of these emotions in these lower levels. When we believe that a relationship is supposed to be different than it is, we are trapped here. Versus looking at something from the higher levels or the bigger picture and saying, our kids need to go through this right now. They're finding their place in the world. Level 2 is all about success. Okay, they've come out of level 1, which was about their survival and their dependence in the world. And now they're moving into a place of really trying to figure out their own life. And that leads us to the top of level 2, which is the grandiosity of the ego. Okay, this is where the narcissist is going to fall. And we all have this characteristic because we all have an ego that we're constantly trying to combat day in and day out. But we don't think it's in us, so we get defensive here. And it makes us competitive in very arrogant ways in which we become very disillusional. And you know that you're caught in this place if you speak with contemptuous speech. Okay, contemptuous speech right here, that's known as scorn. Catch yourself talking with that current of scorn in your voice, and this is where you are. Your ego in that moment is running your show. Now, Dr. Ruth mentioned that it's her faith that has gotten her through that. Absolutely. This is based on a lot of spiritual foundations of different world religions. I do not subscribe to one at all, but because all religions say the exact same thing, and that is that God is love. So we want to move into that state. But when we're in our egoic state, that means we are completely void of having divine energy or spirit in our life. The acronym for ego is edging God out. Okay, so anything below in level 1 and level 2 is because we're really missing something that exists from our core, from our soul, from the inside. And it's the only way for us to move through these levels is from the inside out. We're moving into, this is just the midway point. When we get to this area, it's when our self-esteem begins. Okay, I used to do self-esteem building for young girls in school. And a lot of that teaching was very much that it was about having God in your life. But of course, I couldn't use the word God. So I used very different terms to say you need something in your life that's inside. It's not out there. Call it whatever you want. Call it Bob, call it Frank, call it Jesus, Buddha. I don't care what you call it, but just figure out what that path looks like for you. And this is at the midway point is when we really start to define that for ourselves. Okay, Dr. Ruth is a Christian. I'm not. We still have a conversation about what God looks like for us, and there's no issue, and we just respect one another's point of view. Here again, can you begin to cultivate this? You have to become courageous. This is where empowerment or the first signs of real power begin, and this is where affirmations start to come in. Now, a lot of times in our community, I'll talk about doing daily affirmations, but they can't quite do it until they get to the mid-level. If they're stuck in level 1 or level 2 or haven't quite worked through a lot of the wounds there, affirming something different for yourself is very difficult to do. So again, just understanding that everything's a level of consciousness. Everything is a plane of consciousness. So even though you can identify with this, and you're like, oh, okay, don't send me a bunch of emails telling me where you fall on the consciousness scale. A lot of you are going to say, I'm in level 3, Lisa, I'm in level 4. Okay, don't do that. That's the ego. The ego has to compartmentalize. Now, what everyone who's gone through the program is starting to say is, I really thought I knew a lot, and now I realize I just don't know what anything is for. And that's very much a hallmark of the higher levels. You just don't know what anything is for. You understand that level 1 and level 2 are an illusion, but you realize that now you're trying to incorporate your higher self into those lower selves and integrate it into your life challenges. And a lot of it happens right here at this level. Okay, you have to become courageous. You have to be brave, but man, bravery feels vulnerable. And you can't be defensive here. You have to lay down your sword if you want to be at this level. It's a great deal of uncertainty. I don't know what my future looks like. I don't know if my daughter's ever going to call me again. Wasn't invited to the wedding. Wasn't invited to the college graduation. I don't know. But there's a level of freedom with this as well. Okay? A big level of freedom that comes in that uncertainty of not knowing. From here, you become curious. All right, well, does this have anything to do with me? Does this person's anger have anything to do with me? You can start questioning things now and be more flexible and functional in the world. And big change in consciousness right here is to become trusting. We always say, I'll never trust her again. I'll never trust my child if they come back after doing this to me. Trust is an inside job. All of this is an inside job. Healing our wounds, our fear, our sadness, our guilt. It's an inside job. And when we get to this place, by the way, at the midway point, life feels okay. In this box, life feels okay. You'll say things like, I don't care what my kid does anymore. You know, I'm fine with it. It's almost more work to even think about them or think about getting back with them. That's this midway section. You feel very neutral. Life feels okay, and you've just reached a level of surrendering. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, if you want to transcend this part and get into level 3, which really we're getting into the big time at that point. But if you want to transcend this level of consciousness, requires a big leap of faith. This is not let go, let God. That comes much higher up. This is understanding. It's the serenity prayer. Change the thing you can, accept the things you can't, and being able to know the difference. But this requires a big leap of faith in order for us to get to the next level. Faith without works is dead. So we're not talking about that yet. We're in our 4th month. And what's very typical, we spend almost a month in each of these areas. Sometimes it's 3 weeks. If we don't spend a month here, then we really miss the object of consciousness and the human journey. So your spiritual practice is everything that's happening to you in your life. Again, if you're like, well, this doesn't apply. I'm dating this person. They look like an idiot and has nothing to do with me. Then that becomes your spiritual practice. Do you stay in it to where it's just now you're in, you knew it was wrong from day one, and now you're still in it because you're afraid of being alone? Or were you able to say, I don't think this is going in the right direction? That's discernment. Judgment is, you're wrong, I'm right. Discernment is, can I be good here? And that's a very big difference in the dating world. And it's a very difficult thing to do because the problems always look like it's somebody else. Always looks like it's somebody else. But when we move into level 3, okay, the biggest thing here that needs to happen is you got to have willingness. Willingness is the biggest thing to get into level 3. You'll set higher intentions. You'll be agreeable. And now life looks a lot more optimistic. Okay, nothing has changed. Your kids have not reached out to you, nothing like that. But now you're just willing to maybe do something different. You're willing to take your life back. You're willing to take the steps. Let go, let God was just, I surrender. I'm just going to put everything in God's hands. Willingness is, I'm a creator and I've got to create my life. You're learning how to become at this point your authentic self. So the next 3 levels are our process of becoming. From willingness, the more you're willing, the more you're going to become motivated. Now you're adaptable and capable of new things. You're engaged. You're engaged in a community. You're willing to get into a community, starting to take responsibility for your part. And I'm going to go ahead and stop there for the sake of time. But if you're interested in seeing the rest of the levels of consciousness, then I will go ahead and leave a link in the description below. And we hope you consider joining our course and community. Let me give you just the bird's eye view of this real quick. Our goal is not to get to level 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. It's understanding that it's about integrating our higher selves into our lives and what we need to do that. Okay, so level 1, when we're stuck in level 1, we're a victim. Everything's happening to us and we're waiting for something to be different. We try to take back our control when we move into level 2, but this is also the term where the narcissist is. Again, if you see the narcissist qualities in another, it's in you. So don't go on the YouTube channels of, how to know you're dating a narcissist. It's like, if you can see it, it's in you, fix it in you, and now you don't see it anymore. And then in level 3, we're very aware that we're creating everything in our lives. And this is where we're becoming. We have to practice that becoming, because it's not second nature, unfortunately. And level 4 is when we're just being. We're being who we are meant to be in this world, and we don't have to do anything for that. So all we have to do is just remove the obstacles that are standing in that way. We have to remove the obstacles that stand in our way of being who we are. And that's all the noise and the junk in levels 1 and 2. Does it help? Does it help us maybe move into a better place, showing that we have control? We have control over our thoughts and our minds and our level of consciousness. We 100% have control just by choosing whatever plane we want to live on in that moment. Do we move in and out, up and down, bounce around? Absolutely. We are going to end with sharing just one message from our generation. Like, to summarize this and to leave everybody maybe with new hope and optimism, or just letting you know that life is okay, everything is okay. Or maybe just one final message of what you would want your generation to know based on what we've talked about today.
Thanks. I think honestly, that we still have hope and there's still a chance for us.
And get out of Reddit?
Yeah, get off of Reddit. Unless you're looking at like cute animal pictures, and then I do support that.
Absolutely. The warm fuzzies. I think so.
Yes. I'm going to piggyback off of what Jillian said too, because I couldn't think about what to say that would be condensed, but there's so much to say. I would say really focus on positive things this week and pay attention to your gut. And when you're on social media or anything you're doing, if your gut's telling you stay clear, then pay attention to that, because there's something about that feeling, and your body's trying to tell you something so that you may not be conscious of. So try to really pay attention to your gut this week and stay in positive places.
And I'll just say, continue the journey, continue the healing journey. Don't give up. Just keep moving forward. Even if it feels like you're crawling instead of walking, just keep it going.
Yeah. The deeper you go, the more conscious you become. The more willing you are to work through your stuff, the more conscious you become. The greatest act of love is self-honesty. The greatest act of love is self-honesty. It's the biggest gift that you can give the world, is self-honesty. When we reject another, we're rejecting ourselves. When we reject another, we're rejecting ourselves. I know the person on the other side might not look like they deserve your love or your acceptance. Never does. But we have to remember that anger is fear's father. There's fear there. Underneath that hate is fear. And we all have a lot to be afraid of right now. The world is very uncertain. So we just need to step up the compassion and our willingness to see things differently, and maybe our willingness to take our own healing to a different level. Whatever that looks like, it's going to look like something different for everybody. Step up your spiritual practice just a little bit more. Do a little bit more. Stay off TV a little bit more. And I am eternally grateful for these ladies on this call and everyone who joined us today. Thank you so much, everyone. We appreciate you. And if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, you will be notified of when the videos get added. Please join our Facebook community. We're keeping it positive. We're opening the channels to talk to all the different generations. And then next year when we launch our community, is that different generations will be able to come in and start working together. So until then, you guys know where to find us, and we appreciate all of you for being on this journey with us. Thank you so very much.